If you were being duped, would you want to know about it? If you were missing out on some key part of life that was robbing you of love and joy and peace and purpose, would you want someone to tell you? If there was something that you needed to always be on guard from, if there was something that was always like encroaching, pressing in on your life, threatening to steal those things, love, joy, purpose, peace, would you want somebody to tell you about it? Here's the caveat. If the solution was going to be painful, would you still want to know, even if there might be like a type of death or a loss of something that you loved dearly involved? Would you like to know about it? If so, well then come along today for today's sermon. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to everybody watching in Kitchener, Waterloo, Westside, online. My name's Pete. I'm one of the pastors here, and this is week 3 of a series that we're calling the Prophetic Imagination, where we are looking at these figures and these books in the Bible that are written by these guys that we call the prophets. And when you think of the prophets, think of messengers from God. Don't think what we often think culturally is, oh, those are the fortune tellers. Less fortune tellers, more just people who are speaking on God's behalf. People who are speaking to God's people to remind them of who they were called to be. People who stand up with great courage to say, we're off. We're missing it. We're being duped. We've been led astray. People who stand up and they often say things that feel like a smack in the face. Things that when we read them today culturally, we're like, that doesn't sound like God at all. But it's God being like, wake up, my people. Wake up and return and become the people that I created you to be. The prophets are the ones who stand up and say, God has called you and set you apart to be his treasured possession, his holy nation. These are who the prophets are. And today we're going to look at one of their major themes. You can find this theme across almost every one of the prophets. Some of them, this is like 50 times in a book you find this theme. You could also say that this theme bridges the entire narrative of the Bible. This is a massive theme for understanding the Bible in general, and that is the theme of idol worship. Which I know you're like, oh, first Sunday of March break, talk about what are we even talking? All you know is American Idol, right? American Idol. Are we talking about, what is that? I've always laughed at American Idol, just the idea that like the most Christian nation on the planet created a show and called it American Idol, and nobody was like, hey, that's a weird name. We shouldn't name it that. Like we have a whole book that's like constantly warning us against idols. Let's not create them. That's a weird. That should have been weird, right? I don't know why it wasn't weird. Anyways, a major theme in the prophets, idol worship. Idols are symbolic representations of the different gods at the time. So imagine in their consciousness, they had an idea that there are local deities, there are gods of that region and that region, and there are gods of different nations, and there are gods of different things. Things like the weather. This is a rain god and a sun god. And why do we need that? We need that god to help with our crops. There's a god of fertility. We need to have children. We need help having children. We're not having enough males. We're not having enough females. We need help. Pray to those gods. Gods of war. Gods of power. Gods that you just want to get on your side because you'd rather have them on your side than against you. And so the people at the time would set up different types of like shrines and different types of places of worship, and they might fashion like an idol out of metal or out of wood. You know, you'd make them, you'd make maybe like a little house for him. Maybe you want to add like a little decoration, like a little, there you go, stay warm, buddy. Be light. And you create like a shrine and you would pray here, and you would even offer sacrifices here to these gods. It was a very transactional kind of relationship. It was a I need to get this God on my side. And perhaps if life wasn't going so well, perhaps it was because you were missing a God. Perhaps there was some temple somewhere that you needed to go and visit and offer a sacrifice there, and then that God would be on your side, and now life would start to make sense again, and it would start to go in your favor. Hosea gives us a glimpse into this in this verse. He says, now they sin more and more, talking about God's people. They make idols for themselves from their silver, cleverly fashioned images, all of them the work of craftsmen. It's said of these people, they offer human sacrifices. They kiss calf idols. I pull this verse out just to give you a sense of like, if you were like, is that really an accurate representation of like what? Yeah. They make things for themselves. They're making them out of silver, cleverly fashioned craftsmen. And how far did it go? I mean, you say sacrifices like giving an apple or something. As far as human sacrifice, as far as we could possibly go. Because what do you do when you've given an apple and nothing happens? Well, let's give it a goat and nothing happens. Let's give it an ox and nothing happens. Well, what more can, eventually you ratchet it up. Maybe I could give my firstborn, maybe I could give a child. What does this God want? To get this God on my side. Imagine people kissing these things that they make out of, oh, God, bless me. Oh, please bless me. Oh. Now, it's about this point in the sermon where as I was, I run through these things in my brain and I think about how you're going to be receiving the sermon. And I thought, it's at this point where many of you are thinking, oh, phew, this sermon ain't about me because I don't have one of those in my house. Oh, Pete, thank you that it is March break and finally I can take a sermon off and I don't have to apply any of this to my life. To which, have you seen that meme online of the guy and he just goes, you sure about that? You sure about that? This sermon about idols ain't gonna be about you. You sure about that? When I was a kid, I wanted nothing more than to be an NFL quarterback. I grew up in the days when the Dallas Cowboys there was a reason they were America's team, because they were the best. Troy Aikman won 3 Super Bowls when I was a little kid. And the greatest vision, the greatest thing I could imagine being was an NFL quarterback. Can you imagine what it would have been like if I would have gotten a little guy like this? I don't know if you can see him or not, but like he is a little quarterback. And I made this little guy, and I made a little shrine for him in my room. And imagine if every day I prayed to the gods of Troy Aikman and Brett Favre and Peyton Manning. I'm like, please help me, make my arms stronger, make me grow taller, make me run faster. Please. And imagine I gave things. You'd be like, well, you clearly didn't do that. And you're right, I didn't do that. But I did foster this vision of the good life. I did think day after day, oh, I will be happy if I can just be that. If I could get to the NFL, if I could be famous, if I could be rich, if I could just get to play a sport for a living, that would be true fulfillment. I did foster that. And so while I didn't have one of these in my room, I did have one of these in my heart. What is idol worship, after all? It's not just this physical thing that's happening. It is anytime anything takes the place of God in your life. Anytime anything begins to trump God in your life. Your love for God. Anytime you begin to love something else more than you love God, anything that you begin to put your hope in, begin to put your trust in, begin to say, this thing will save me, this thing will satisfy me. Anytime that you could fill in the blank of this sentence, if I get this, then I'll be happy. Or conversely, if I were to lose this, I would be miserable. That's what an idol is. And this is just how it often manifested back in those days. But we all have these shrines in our hearts. You sure you don't have any idols kicking around? Little loves that are stealing the love that is only due to God? How about some examples? There's the big three: money, power, sex. Those, you sure you don't dream and imagine, oh, what will my life be like if I could just have those three? Just endless amounts of those three. That's the good life, isn't it? What do you find you think about most often? Where does your mind go in those slower parts of the day? What are you consumed with? What are you worrying about? Oftentimes it's things connected to lifestyle. If I could just get the right clothing, whenever I'm wearing the right clothing, whenever I'm wearing something new, whenever I'm in fashion, I feel like, then I'm really in stride. And if I couldn't have those, if I couldn't dress the best, I think I would always just kind of walk around feeling like a little bit like I'm missing it. If I could just keep my face looking young, if I could just get these wrinkles to just less wrinkles, then I think I would be happy. If I could just kind of deny or reverse the aging process, then I would be happy. And perhaps if you realize that about yourself, you begin to realize, have I made beauty an idol? Have I made keeping my body a certain look into an idol? Do I exercise for health so that then I can use my body to serve God? Or do I exercise so that I will look a certain way so that other people will think certain things about me? Exercise can be a great way to serve God. Exercise can be a great way to just turn your body into an idol. All kinds of things connected to lifestyle can become idols. How about travel? Many of you are traveling right now on March break. Many of you are about to go and travel. What if you weren't allowed to travel ever again? You got to stay here. You got to stay in Waterloo. You got to stay in Chatham. Why does everyone laughs more when I say you got to stay in Chatham? Sorry, Chatham. Chatham's a great destination place. Okay. What if you couldn't travel anymore? You're like, oh, I think I would feel, not just sad. Okay, you'd be sad, you lose something that's a good thing, but I think I've actually placed way too much weight on this thing. How about relationships? Relationships can become idols. These are the weirdest ones because they're good things, but they can become ultimate things. And that's when we're in trouble, when good things become ultimate things. Your marriage, your spouse can become an idol. You look to them to fulfill you. And they cannot. Not the way that God can. And when you do that, you put a weight on them that they were never meant to bear. Oh, if we could just have kids, then I'd be satisfied. And you put a weight on your kids that they were never meant to bear. Religion can become an idol. Theology can become an idol. Faith and trust in the political system can become an idol. Do you find yourself worrying day after day about whether or not we are being ushered into a golden age? Or are we on the brink of World War III? I don't know. It's got to be either one. I can't stop thinking about it. Give me the next news bit. Have you created an idol out of politics, as if politics is the thing that's going to save you, rescue us? You may not have one of these in your house, but you sure you don't have one of these in your heart? I want to read for you a passage that's a little bit long from the prophet Isaiah. And I want you to hear it as a conflict of imaginations. A conflict between the God who is creator, redeemer, savior, and the imagination of the human who would like to fashion some other God for itself. In this passage that I'm going to read for you, there's a bunch of things going on. One of the things that's going on is that the people have forgotten who God is. And so the whole thing is bookended by God reminding them who he is. It begins with God saying, like, who else is like me? Who else is a redeemer like me? Who else is a rock like me? Who else has formed a people like me? He's reminding them of their history. He's reminding them of, remember when I brought you out of Egypt? Remember when I rescued you? And then he goes into this whole like, but you have done this and created idols for yourselves. And then by the end, then he reminds them again, but I'm your redeemer, so return to me. There's this theme of you have forgotten. Your imagination has been hijacked. And I'm trying to pull you back into a better story, one where I am your God. And you don't just make gods for yourselves. There's this theme of forgetting in it. There's also this theme of finiteness, that you are choosing to worship something that is clearly finite, that is clearly not the source. You could worship the source and you've chosen something finite. And lastly, the theme that I want you to think about as I read through this is that there is a willful blindness. There is of course, that's not God. Of course, this thing can't say, of course. And yet you give yourself to it. It's like you are willfully blind, and now you are just, over years of being willfully blind, now you are actually blind. So with that, let me read for you from Isaiah. I've taken out the first couple verses where God reminds them that he is their creator, their rescuer, their redeemer. And then God begins to say, all who make idols are nothing. And the things that they treasure are worthless. Those who would speak up for them are blind. They are ignorant to their own shame. Who shapes a god and casts an idol which can profit nothing? People who do that will be put to shame. Such craftsmen are only human beings. Let them all come together and take their stand. They will be brought down to terror and shame. The blacksmith takes a tool and works with it in the coals. He shapes an idol with hammers. He forges it with the might of his arm. He gets hungry and loses his strength. Then he drinks no water, and he grows faint. The carpenter measures with a line and makes an outline with a marker, and he roughs it out with chisels and marks it with compasses. He shapes it in human form in all its glory, that it may dwell in a shrine. He cut down cedars, or perhaps took a cypress or an oak. He let it grow among the trees of the forest, or planted a pine, and the rain made it grow. It's used as fuel for burning. Some of it he takes and warms himself. He kindles a fire and bakes bread, but he also fashions a god and worships it. He makes an idol and bows down to it. Half of the wood he burns in the fire, and over it he prepares his meal. He roasts his meat and he eats his fill. He also warms himself and says, I am warm, I see the fire. From the rest he makes a god, his idol. He bows down to it and worships. He prays to it and says, save me. You are my God. God's trying to show how foolish this whole thing is. He's like, you planted some trees and then you needed like rain and stuff to grow it. And then you took that tree and part of it you used to like warm yourself. And then the other part you're like, yeah, let's make a god and worship it. And say, oh, save me. And you're like, well, what about all the wood that you burned? Did you burn it? Was that a god too? Why did you burn it? You shouldn't have burned it. That might have been the God that could save you. But what if you kept the wrong wood? God's like making fun of the people here. He's like making fun of this. This is stupid. And yet you are blind to it. They know nothing. They understand nothing. Their eyes are plastered over so that they cannot see. And their minds are closed so they cannot understand. No one stops to think. No one has the knowledge or understanding to say, half of it I use for fuel. I even baked bread over its coals. I roasted meat and I ate. Shall I make a detestable thing from what is left? Shall I bow down to a block of wood? Such a person feeds on ashes. A deluded heart misleads him. He cannot save himself or say, is not this thing in my right hand a lie? It's verses like this why I wanted to do this series. Because there are tragically beautiful, poetic verses like this that I think unlock something for us. Let me read this again. Such a person is feeding on ashes. What a picture. Feeding on ashes. They have a deluded heart that misleads them. You cannot save yourself. You can't even say, is this thing in my right hand not a lie? Is not this thing a lie? And yet you have become so deluded. You have been feasting on ashes for so long that you no longer can look at this and say, this is a lie. God ends this little section by saying this: remember these things, Jacob. For you, Israel, are my servant. I have made you. You are my servant. Israel, I will not forget you. Even though you've forgotten me, I will not forget you. I have swept away your offenses like a cloud, your sins like the morning mist. So return to me, for I have redeemed you. This thing has not redeemed you. This has not rescued you. I have done these things, so return to me. For as much as God will make fun of the people and be like, you're so dumb, you're so blind, at the end of it, there's always this thread of hope, as Brandon talked about last week. So see this, be woken up, and return to me. Jeremiah has a similarly beautiful passage. It's just 3 verses, but let me read it for you. Has a nation ever changed its gods? Yet they are not gods at all. And yet my people have exchanged their glorious God for worthless idols. The worst exchange ever. Be appalled by this, you heavens, and shudder with great horror, declares the Lord. My people have committed 2 sins. They have forsaken me, the spring of living water, and they have dug their own cisterns, broken cisterns that cannot hold water. They have forsaken the spring of living water. It's like you were sitting by a waterfall of water, pure, fresh water, a source of living water. You were right there. You had it. And you were like, you know what? I got a shovel. Maybe I could go find some water on my own. And you start digging the cistern. And this cistern will never be anything compared to the source of living water. And yet you're like, maybe I'll give this a try. And the longer that you're there, and the more that you recognize how broken it is and how it cannot even hold water, you're still staying here rather than going back to the source, the spring of living water. Time and time again, throughout the prophets, God speaks to the people and he warns them. And he is angry that they have given themselves over, that they have set up thrones in their hearts for other things, that their imaginations have been taken over. That rather than living in the story of the God who rescued us from Egypt, the God who is a living spring of water, the God who loves us and wants to redeem us, rather than living in that story, people keep beginning to imagine their own stories. And all those stories do is leave you thirsty, leave you empty, and leave you hungry. And God is angry about this because he's jealous and he loves his people and he wants the praise that they're giving to idols because he is worthy of it. But he is also angry because he loves the people, because he loves us. And he knows that idol worship will only leave us empty. It will only rob us of the love and the joy and the peace and the purpose that we were created to have. Oh, this is a heavy sermon. Okay. How about a joke? I saw this this week. And I hope that this exists in real life and it's not just made up, but let me read this for you. Danger, high voltage. Not only will this kill you, it will hurt the whole time you're dying. Oh, it's the best. I literally was like going through this sermon. I was like, this sermon's going to be heavy. And then I saw this on Facebook. I'm like, oh, a joke. Thank you. I need a joke because it's great. Not only will this kill you, not only will idols kill you, but it will hurt the whole time you're dying. It feels like something that the prophets would write. Like a modern day prophet, they would write that. They're like, what are you doing? This thing, it's not only gonna result, like the end of the path isn't just death, but the whole way there is gonna be like dying. It's gonna be like you're thirsty and like unsatisfied and worrying. You're full of anxiety and fear the whole way there. So why? So why do you keep this thing? I realized that one of the challenges of this sermon was going to be to have each person here be able to identify idols in their own hearts. And that if you can identify one, that you would leave here feeling like, oh, not for me. And yet this is like the human condition, is to constantly have the throne of our hearts being wrestled over. And so I wanted to give you some questions to help you maybe diagnose what your idol might be. So here's some questions, and I pull some of these themes from a great minister from the 17th century named David Charleston. Yeah, that doesn't feel right. David Clarkson. How to diagnose your idol. I'm going to go through these 12 questions, and there won't be enough time to reflect on each one of them right now, but maybe something will ping in your mind as I go through them. And maybe you'll either write them down now, or you can find them online on the online sermon notes that are on the front of our web page right now. You can find all of these things and more. But what do you value most in life? What dominates your thoughts? What are you always thinking about? What are you determined to do? I will make this thing happen. What do you love? What's your nightmare? Show me the things that you fear, and I can probably show you your idol. Oh, if this were to happen, that would be the worst. Then I would never be happy again. What do you sacrifice time and money for? What do you hope for? What are you hoping for? Do you hope for like trivial, finite, personal things, lifestyle things? Or do you hope for big things like the coming of the kingdom of God? Hope for justice. Hope for healing. Hope for the return of King Jesus. What do you spend your time hoping for? What do you desire? What brings you the most delight? What do you most look forward to? I can't wait to go and worship. I can't wait to go pray. I can't wait to go read the Bible. Or is it something else that really I can't wait to go? That's where I find the most delight. What makes you angry? What do you complain about? What are you most thankful for? What are you most disappointed about? Your disappointments in life can often point to the things that you were propping up as idols, the things that you were placing weight on, that when they could not bear the weight that you placed on them, they fell through and they ended in disappointment. Thinking about what disappoints you can often reveal to you what your idols are. I'm hoping that in this moment that you're all feeling something, that God has brought to the surface something in your life that is perhaps competing with him on this throne. And so then the question becomes, what do I do? What do I do with the idol? I gotta smash it down. I would love to do that right now, just smash all this down, but I might break something, or who knows. I gotta get rid of it. But the funny thing is that if you read through the Bible, in the Old Testament, the Israelites, time and time again, they return to God, and one of the things they do when they do that is they do smash all the idols, and they tear down the poles, and they get rid of everything, but they just come right back. Sometimes on the same page, sometimes just a couple pages later, the idols just come right back, because it was never just a physical problem, it was a spiritual problem. And so the way to deal with idols isn't just to smash them, although that may be fun. And if you have something like this in your home, go ahead and smash it. But what you really need to do is replace it. Because this is a heart issue. This is a love issue. You have fallen in love with some version of what salvation, of what satisfaction, of what the good life looks like. You've fallen in love with it, and that's why got the throne of your heart. And so what you need to do is replace it with a deeper and ever-growing love for God. What you need to do is replace it with that, and the way that you foster that love is by doing things like you're doing right now, listening to a sermon, being in a worship service, having these times throughout the week on your own, praying, fasting, giving up certain things that maybe you're like, I think I do love this thing too much. I'm going to get rid of it for a specific amount of time and then spend more time in prayer. And then maybe when I do that, I find that there's actually like a war within me. There's sort of I don't want to be with God. I'd rather be with my burrito. You're like, oh, that's interesting. And have that little wrestling match and play that out. The way to get rid of idols is you don't just smash them in like a moment, but you foster this love for God by spending time with him, by remembering the story of the God who saves us and who redeems us and who loves us. But doing this is hard, and it takes time, and it takes energy and intentionality. It's hard because what idols promise is a form of control. There is at least the illusion of control. That in this transactional relationship, I can actually get what I want from this. And when we allow God to take his place on the throne of our heart, there is no control, there is only surrender. It's also hard to replace these things because when you get really honest, you realize that you love these things. You love these versions of the good life that have been planted in you by culture and by commercials and by other people that you know, that if only I had their life, then I would be happy. You love those things. And if someone offered it to you, you would so gladly take it. And in fact, if someone said, if you just have to give up this in order to get that, you would gladly sacrifice that thing to get it. The truth is that you love your idol, which is why it can be so hard to replace. There's a great story that C.S. Lewis writes in his book called The Great Divorce. And if you're not familiar with The Great Divorce, it's a strange kind of like fictional setup where there's people that live in this like hellish town. And from time to time, the people from this hellish town, they go on like a bus ride through the countryside that is like outside the outskirts of heaven. And so you imagine like these people, they live in this hellish town and they become like monsterly. They've become like ghosts of themselves. They become shells of themselves, of humans. But every once in a while, they get to like come from that place and like get close to heaven and get a picture of what life could be like if they surrendered to God. In my favorite story in this book, there is one particular ghost who has a red lizard on his shoulder. And the red lizard is symbolic of so many different things. It can be symbolic of sin in your life, but I think it makes a great symbol for an idol in your life. And the man is on his way back to his hellish town, and he's clearly like conversing with the lizard on his shoulder, and the lizard's like, yo, we need to get back. We gotta go back. We gotta go back. We gotta go back. And the lizard's been boisterous and has been loud throughout their journey on the countryside. And so the man's like, I can't. I knew I couldn't be here. We're gonna go back. And as he turns to go back, this angelic type figure, this burning one, says to him, off so soon? Yes, we need to go because I thought that he would be quiet, but he's not being quiet, and so I've recognized that we can't be here, and so we don't belong here. We need to go back. And then the angel says to him, "Would you like me to make him be quiet?" Oh, that would be nice. And so the burning one begins to encroach upon the ghostly figure. And then the ghostly figure begins to say, you're hurting me. Oh, it's burning. Oh, get back. What are you doing? And the burning one says, do you not want me to kill it? To which the man, kill it? You said only to make it quiet. I thought we were just talking about making it quiet. That seems like way over the top that we would need to kill it. I don't think we need to kill it. I'll just be going. It's okay. I don't want to trouble you any further. To which the burning one says, I can kill it for you. Would you like me to kill it? oh, well, let me consider it some more. Maybe I'll go back and I'll think about it, and maybe I'll come back at another moment. Maybe there'll be a better time. After all, I'm not feeling so good right now. This wouldn't really be the best time for it. And the burning one just pushes in once again. May I kill it? Can I kill it? I think that what would be best is a more gradual process, not something like all at once. I think that something more slower, like a more slow burn, like something like that would be better. This feels like too much all at once. I'll come back in a different moment. To which the burning one says, all moments are present in this moment. All days are present in this day. And the man, the ghostly figure, begins to think, he's like, if you kill this thing, I think you're going to kill me with it. I think that this thing has become so wrapped around my heart and my soul that if you kill it, that I will die too. To which the burning one says, it's not true. And then the lizard starts to talk and says, it's true, he can kill me. He can kill me and we'll never be together again. And all the things that we love to do together, we'll never get to do those again. And I know that we haven't been happy recently, but we can be happy again. And I know I've been loud and out of control, but I can get under control. And things will get better. Things are going to get better. Let's just go back home. Can I kill it now? Do I have your permission to kill it? If you kill it, you're going to kill me. To which the burning one says, would that be so bad? Finally, the man, in like the deepest revelation that he has throughout this whole thing, he says, even if it kills me, it would be better to be rid of this thing than to have to keep living with it. And so with a frustrated sort of surrender, he says, okay, do it. And the burning one comes in upon him and he wraps his arms around the lizard and there's a loud shriek, ah! And the lizard gets thrown to the ground and the ghost is thrown back and the ghost begins to become a man again, fully fleshed out, bigger than he was before. And then in a surprising twist, the lizard becomes this beautiful stallion. To which if you're reading the story, you're like, what? I thought it was like a demon or something. But it's Lewis's way of saying it wasn't something that was inherently evil. It was just something that was disordered. It was a good thing that had become an ultimate thing. And once you put the good thing back in its place, now it can be a good thing again. And so now the new reborn man jumps on the stallion and they ride off together. Can I kill it? Can I kill it now? Do I have your permission to kill it? I trust that as I've been speaking this morning, God has spoken to you, and that there are people in this room, and there's people in Kitchener and in Chatham and in Westside who right now feel like there is an idol that you would love for God to kill. And if that's you, then I want to invite you to do something that is frankly awkward to do, and that is to stand up. I invite you right now, in whatever room you're watching me in, to stand up. If there is something that you're like, I'm doing battle with an idol, I'm calling out an idol, I want to get rid of an idol. Stand up as a way of declaring, I feel all mixed up in what I love, but God, I declare I want to love you more. I want to love you more than anything else that is competing for my heart. Stand up and create this as a moment where you say, I've had enough. God, would you kill it? I invite you to stand up. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to stand up with you because I've got my own battles I'm fighting. And in this moment, may you know the most important thing there is to know, that God loves you. These things do not love you. These things will only let you down and keep you in a prison. And there is a God who loves you so much that he died to set you free from these things. God the Father loves you so much that he sent his only Son. God the Son loves you so much that he gave his life. And God the Holy Spirit in this moment is speaking to you. He is touching you. He is pouring the love of God into your heart. God, in this moment, may your love be so real, so overpowering that it knocks any idol off of the throne of our heart. That there is a replacement happening right now. That God, we are feeling your love flood into our hearts. We're feeling your arms wrap around us the way that the prodigal felt the Father's arms. When he finally realized all the things that he got caught up in and he came back home and his father runs out to him and wraps his arms around him. God, may we feel that in this moment. And may this love be so firmly rooted in our souls that we would never go back. God, you are the source of living water. And when we come to you, we will never be thirsty again. May that be true of us in a moment that begins right now. God, set us free. Open our eyes. Set us free. Jesus, we love you. But we only love you because you love us first. Thank you for showing us your love by dying for us on a cross. Help us to be your people, your treasured possession, your holy nation, a kingdom of priests. Jesus, we pray these things in the power of the Spirit to our Father in heaven. Amen.